This episode of the Health Geeks Book Club podcast is brought to you by me, Sal, your financial pal. If you ever have questions or concerns about achieving your financial successes on a personal or business level, give me a call. I also connect with 401k planning, so if that's something you're interested in, glad to do it for you guys. Again, this is Sal Edward Jones, happy to help wherever you are on your journey. So let's plan for tomorrow, today. My office can be reached at 336-748-1271. Look forward to connecting with you all soon. Hola, me llamo Salvador Valencia y trabajo con Edward Jones. Soy un asesor financiero y lo que hago es planear para el futuro. Si hay muchos cambios en su vida que pueden ocurrir, me pueden llamar y yo puedo contestar sus preguntas. Si tienen preguntas sobre inversiones o cómo su dinero puede trabajar más fuerte por ustedes, llámame y yo les puedo contestar sus preguntas y darle información en cómo se puede hacer. Me pueden contactar al número 336-748-1271.
Welcome to the Health Geeks Book Club podcast. Listen in as Kristen Norton and Eleanor Russell review all those great health and wellness books you've been wanting to read or you have read and want to talk about. Here's Kristen and Eleanor.
Hey, Eleanor.
Hey, hi. Are you a health geek?
Yes, I am. Are you?
Oh, I believe I qualify for one. As one. Not for one, but as one.
Do you remember the Health Geek trip we went on to the bookstore? Wasn't that fun?
Oh, yeah, our field trip? Yeah.
Our field trip. So there were some books that you've wanted to read. We kind of go back and forth, trading interests and suggesting books. And this was one that you had been wanting to find something in this area about Indigenous wellness and teachings. Mm-hmm. So tell me, why do you have an interest in that, or what piqued that for you?
Well, many years ago, I had the good fortune of knowing someone with Cherokee heritage, and they recommended a book for me to read by Hieronymus Storm, I think, and it was about Indian life and wellness and history, and it was from a modern voice. And it was, I'm mentioned that Tim and I are from West Virginia, mm-hmm. And so I have Appalachian heritage and come from the European invasion, as they call it. So as we have had this journey into science here in the Western culture that is America, and the way we've structured our society, I think it's interesting to look at other cultures. And so our conversation on health and wellness is basically from an American perspective, in the discussions that we've had. And then some years after reading that book, I was out at Tanglewood Park, which is one of our wonderful parks here, and there's a Native American medicine wheel out there. And I didn't know what that was, so there was a little pamphlet about it, and I started reading it, and I said, oh, well, this is from a book called Dancing with the Wheel. And so I went out and bought this book about dancing with the wheel and started to read it, didn't finish it. And then you and I started this book club, and I said, let's go back and finish that book. So I just think, I also read a book about when the spirit moves you, you fall down, and it was written maybe in the 90s, and it was about the story of a Cambodian that had arrived in San Francisco on the boat, and they had a child that had epilepsy, and in their culture, epilepsy was not considered the same way as American medical community looks at epilepsy. So it was a story of that family's journey into a brand new culture, a brand new medical system, and the chaos that it caused that family. And then years later, I got to teaching some approaches to how do we take care of patients in the medical system when they come from different cultures. And mm-hmm. we don't know what their culture is, and we just assume they know what we know, or we think they should do what we... So I know there's something there, and that's why I've been wanting to read one of these books, because I think there's something that comes to us by knowing about other ways that could be good for us.
Yeah, one of the very first things that caught my attention on page 6.
Do we know the title of this book?
We will in a minute, but I feel like I can share this. That most Americans today are familiar with cultural-specific health-oriented practices from many other parts of the world. You have Denmark with, is it?
Hygge.
Hygge. Why can I not speak? feng shui from China,
And we've read about that.
or yoga from India,
We read about that.
but know nothing of the ancient wellness teachings from the land on which they stand. The ignorance was no accident. Indigenous voices have been shut out and silenced from all parts of the American story. Well, so what we're talking about today is the 7 Circles, Indigenous Teachings for Living Well by Chelsea Lugar, maybe that's how you say it, and Thosh Collins. Tired of feeling stuck in your health journey? At Well Balanced Nutrition, we understand that achieving your health goals isn't just about what you eat. It's about overcoming the mental roadblocks holding you back. Our team of expert nutrition coaches is here to guide you every step of the way, helping you break through mindset barriers and reach your full potential. Don't let mindset barriers stand in the way of your health and happiness. Call Well Balanced Nutrition today and start your journey to a better you.
Yeah, so Chelsea is a writer enrolled in the Turtle Mountain Band of Chippewa. She holds a BA in History and Native American Studies from Dartmouth College, has an MS in Journalism from Columbia University. Her work has appeared in Atlantic, Huffington Post, Now, This Week, and elsewhere. And Thosh Collins is a senior trainer for the Native Wellness Institute and a photographer. He's a citizen of the Salt River Pima Maricopa Indian community, where he sits on the Land Management Board and remains active in cultural programming and gatherings. And they have quite an extensive social media presence. And their moniker, I think, is Well for Culture. So this book reminded me in its physical appearance of the book we read in Forest Bathing, because it has these beautiful photographs in it, and the typeset and the page,
diagrams.
yeah, is similar. So it's a beautiful book to hold and look at, and it's structured very well too. They have a discussion at the beginning of their chapters that there are groupings that they're talking about, and then they talk about how this circle of wellness heals, and they show evidence of the topic in relationship to each thing, and then how to take action from that and to learn and engage and optimize the information. So they have taken us on a journey into the medicine wheel.
That's right. And they say, we know that settler colonism is the root of many of the health challenges that people face today, indigenous or not, and that understanding this will help people heal. We also know that health through the indigenous lens will be refreshing and uplifting for many. The wellness industry is dominated by limited ideas that prioritize physical appearance, consumerism, and youth. So this feels like a good follow-up from the wellness, but not wellness Bible. Gospel of Wellness, right? Because it kind of calls out those very things where the wellness industry gets wrong. And this kind of brings it back to something that is more pure, connected to the earth. And I loved it. I loved it for that reason.
I wanted to read a quote from Standing Bear. He says, "True civilization lies in the dominance of self and not in the dominance of other men." And so this book talks a lot about individuality, and that we can't, and that they're very, the authors take care to say, we don't know all the answers.
Right, yeah.
We can tell you our experience. We can tell you what we've learned from our ancestors. But we don't know it all, and we're in the middle of this process as well. And they're in their 40s. They're a young couple with small children at this point. They've got their education behind them. They've been living in the reservation areas and in, Dartmouth. They're integrated into current American culture. So they have insight into that too, but they do not want to lose what they have before. And when you look at the... maybe we can talk a little bit about what they talk. It's controversial because I can't decide if they're writing this book for other indigenous people or if they're really writing it for all of us. I wasn't really clear on that. Did you get a sense of?
Right. They say that it's for everybody. And I don't know. I think that parts of it felt like it wasn't for me. But it was also nice because they're wanting to not lose that connection to the traditions that they have. And I think that's important for everybody in all cultures. But there were those times where I felt, oh, maybe this isn't for me because of that.
Well, you read that quote about settler colonization, and they spend a lot of time helping. If you've never thought about it, it is something to consider, because knowing our history is a good thing. And a lot of us don't know, like they said, a lot of us don't know anything about what was here before we built this civilization. In the chapter where they're talking about the legacy of our ancestors, they say colonization began 500 years ago and it hasn't yet ended. Led by the amoral guidance of the doctrine of discovery and manifest destiny, Europeans stopped at nothing to take land, life, and livelihood from our people. Their invasion initiated widespread ecological disruption, led to the destruction of the once symbiotic relationship between human, planet, and animal populations. They imposed an industrial, capitalist economy that made it impossible for most people today, native or not, to live in a way that honors the health of the people or the planet. In 1492, where somewhere between 20 million and 100 million indigenous people lived in North America, by 1900, only 200,000 were left. Our ancestors are survivors. So they're grateful that they're here today, and they're grateful for the survivors that have held their stories and talked to them. And I don't know that I know much about this, but it seems to me that they have an oral tradition of history. The stories are passed from person to person. And I think that oral, some of the restrictions of oral tradition is that memory. You know, what can you remember? And so in neuroscience, I think we've determined people can retain about 7 things at a time.
Yeah.
You know, you can hold on to 7 ideas. So this number 7 shows up over and over and over in this book, the 7 circles of wellness and the 7 wisdoms of this and this. So I thought that was, I picked up on that, and I thought, yeah, if you have to depend on yourself to keep it and share it, it's got to be simple and it's got to be manageable. So anyway, some people might take issue with the harshness of the way they feel, and some of us might say that's a victim mentality, but I don't know that I want to go there. I want to appreciate the struggle that these people have had.
Right.
And they say for us, wellness is not a perfect state of being. It's a state of preparedness for the inevitable hardships in life.
I like that. I highlighted that because we've picked up these definitions of wellness and other things as we go, and I love that.
Yeah, and that was pretty much what Burnout said their definition was. It's like, it's not what you look like. It's can you go forward.
That's right, and manage all that life has to give to you. Another thing I like that they pointed out is self-mastery must come from within. So we can give you this information and carry it on, but it calls out that you got to be ready to change. You got to, we can't force you to care about your health. This has to be something you want to do. With that journey that I had into medical education, I had a student that upon graduation went to work in a reservation, and she was, I think she was Jewish, so I wouldn't call that European heritage. But she came back to the school and said, you guys got to start teaching about historical trauma and generational issues. And I was going, huh? This was early because that's not uncommon to be talked about now. We are understanding the effect on our genes of this generational trauma. So it's a real thing, I believe, and I think there's evidence for it. And so we do need to be informed. As we're reading from our other authors, the more information we have, the better we are to make decisions on actions. And so this idea that knowing where to go and what to do is based on appreciating what people have experienced. And that group of people seems to have a high, because I have another friend that's in Alaska that was working on a reservation. She was a school teacher, and she said the number of domestic violence issues and the alcoholism was incredible. And that these little children just need to be held and hugged, and the women needed to be supported. And there's a lot of movies now. I think there's one out about violence to Native American women that have gone missing
something about Killers of the Flower Moon. Isn't that what that story's about? So yeah, how did that people turn into such a rough situation? And when you start looking at this trauma they've had, it begins to help us understand why it may be there, but then how do we help, or do they want our help? And how, you get into all that conversation too.
I like how they put it: trauma-informed and healing-centered. They say when we recognize, respect, and learn to appropriately respond to trauma, we become trauma-informed. But they don't stop there. They say it's critical to be able to recognize and respect the trauma, yet we must be careful to not allow trauma to define the fate or experiences of ourselves and others.
There you go.
I like that kind of call to action. Like, we need to be sensitive to this, and they're calling everybody to not let that define them.
Yeah, they wanted to conjure resilience, and this mental, physical, emotional, and spiritual strength building is where our work focuses. As full-time wellness advocates, we share educational tools online and travel the world to teach, learn, and present techniques for healing and living well. And they've been to Nike and Google and all sorts of places.
Yeah.
So,
you know how we read the What Happened to You?
Mm-hmm.
They say where there has been trauma, healing is the answer. We view the 7 circles of wellness and indeed the concept of indigenous wellness as a healing-centered approach. In our work, we are moving beyond the question, what happened to you, and further asking, what is right for you? What are your gifts? What are the benefits, or what are the beneficial, beautiful, and healing aspects of your culture, family, and community that you have experienced and inherited? I think those are all great questions for everyone.
Yeah, and so moving away from the history, I think we should talk now about what is it they're suggesting? What are these 7 circles all about? It's a model that they've come up with, a formalized wellness methodology. They call it a visual healing tool, and it's reminded me of another tool we discovered in a book we read called Food We Need to Talk. They had a diagram that had 8 circles. This one has 7 circles. But I am partial to this one, and I'm very partial to the message in this book because I think it is so sensible and so centered in a way that it's not, you don't have to know all the details of it. It's just, this is the way. I kind of like the simplicity of it. So what they're looking at is the areas of living that their ancestors so brilliantly mastered, and they invite us to build strength, to heal, to honor our whole selves through this indigenous wellness philosophy and practices. So I think it's a nice invitation.
Yeah, they go through the different areas, and on each of those areas, they have a learn, engage, and optimize stage, and they realize this is like a full circle. You might be in learn at some point, you might be engage and optimize, then you go back to learning again. We're always in
fluid.
One of those things.
Yeah, we're never finished. And I think they contrast that to the Western approach, which has always been the beginner, the intermediate, and the advanced.
Right, and once you're advanced,
you don't
know
need
it all.
Yeah, right. And they say it's not real. So this is an ongoing process, and I believe that. I agree with them.
That.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
and they say that we should start everything with gratitude, and I love that. And I think we have seen that in some of our wellness reading too. As long as we can center ourselves on gratitude, our emotional health is going to be a little bit better too.
Yeah.
So at the center of this diagram or this wheel that they've got are just 4 quadrants: the spiritual health, the mental health, and some people would tease that out, or might not tease that out, and then the emotional and physical health. So 3/4 of this thing don't have to do with physical health. They're based on emotion, mental, and spiritual in the majority of their approach to wellness.
And I found that as a takeaway when we talk about the blue zones, that it wasn't all physical there either.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah, and so their 7 circles are movement, the land, community, ceremony, sacred space, sleep, and food. And then what they do is they take us into each one of those circles and show how it's relevant to emotional, spiritual, mental, or physical health. And so they kind of turn the circle inside out and back around. I mean, it's a very fluid circle.
Mm-hmm.
So you have one you want to start with?
No, but I have something that I want to share, and then
Okay.
I can open it up to you. I highlighted this because it really stood out to me. Imbalance will always be a part of a balanced life.
Yes.
Wow.
Love it.
That's good. And then our hope is that in accepting this, you feel a sense of progress and flow already in place. And they invite you to ask, where are you thriving now in these 7 circles? Mm-hmm. So share those with us.
Did 7 circles?
Mm-hmm.
I just did.
Oh, sorry. Start us off is what I meant.
Oh, okay. Well, they start off, which was the first one that they do. In their introduction, though, I think they give some examples, kind of where you were, where you're thriving now, that I thought were helpful when you're going through this. Take some time and draw your 7 circles, and in the various sizes they are. So you're making your personal ones. So if you're doing a lot of physical movement, that might be a giant circle. And if you're not doing anything with sacred space, it might be smaller. So that's how this thing navigates. And they say you can consider both conventional health-related concepts like healthy eating, or unconventional or atypical health-related concepts like family and community connection. And then these examples are, if you're a devoted grandparent or auntie, you are thriving in community. So if you have trouble figuring out, what does that mean? What does community mean? Well, if you're a devoted grandparent or an auntie, okay. If you do not bring your phone and another device to bed with you at night to avoid the negative aspects of blue light, and you wake up feeling refreshed, you're thriving in sleep, which is one of the circles. If you spend one day each week on an intentional social media fast, integrating silence and stillness into your day instead, you're thriving in ceremony. So they give you some ideas of how to convert this to, what are you asking me to do?
Right.
You know, how do I even assess myself? They give you some examples, and I think that's a nice thing that they do for us.
It is.
You know, so
They begin with movement. Do
yes,
you want
they
to start
do.
there?
Yeah, I do. I like movement.
Yes.
And I think in a lot of our wellness reading, we've said that's the magic pill. You know, if you don't move your body, you're not going to be as healthy as you should be.
And
Or as you can be. There's no shoulding, is there?
there's no shoulding.
No, don't shoot on myself.
Yeah. And I like the way the native will view our strength. So they say that it's a gift to be honored, nourished, and cared for, and celebrating our strength. And we kind of today look at it like I should go to the gym.
Mm-hmm.
I need to do this
I
because
have
it's
to lift
healthy
weights
for me.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And they tie it to, this is kind of our duty. This is a gift we're given, and we're going to take care of it. And a challenging movement practice is not just for a star athlete or a bodybuilder. It's a way for everyone to prepare themselves for the moments in life when others need them. I saw the sweetest reel the other day about this older man was doing kettlebell exercises. And then it just kind of, you saw him progress in his ability to do this. And then in the end, you saw the reason why he wanted to do that. Have you seen it?
No, but I'm guessing.
It's lifting his grandchild up to put the star on the Christmas tree. I'm like, that is so special. That is why we should want to move our bodies.
Right. And a lot of the guidance that we've gotten is to find your why.
Yeah.
That doing all this stuff makes no difference if you don't know why you're doing it. So looking for the why. One of the things they talk about, I said that they're going to take the big circle and then reflect it against the central circle, which is the spirit, the mental, emotional, and physical. So they say movement heals by incorporating breath, intention, and prayer with each movement practice, no matter what that movement practice will result in spiritual growth and a heightened connection to yourself and or the Creator. So returning to our breath, and James Nestor, who wrote the book Breath?
I think it is James.
Yeah, that was a good book too, because it talked about different rhythms of breathing and patterns and things that we forget to even do every day, and we breathe all the time.
Breath, the new science of a lost art, was James Nestor.
Yes, good.
Very good.
How does movement heal in the emotional area? Different movement practices impact our emotions in different ways. Understanding this allows us to use movement as a tool to work through or with our emotions. Gratitude is a positive feeling that can be centered through movement. Giving thanks for our bodies and our ability to move turns our mindset towards healing and away from harmful thoughts like shame.
Mm-hmm. Kind of the counter to body image issues that we talk about in Food We Need to Talk, and the counter to the wellness issues we see in the Gospel of Wellness.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so by moving our body, we are going to get better brain function, right? Cognitive function. We're going to maybe prevent injuries and falling. We're going to, if we can do it with someone like our family, then the whole family is going to benefit from it, which I do encourage. Positive gene expression. So we get down to, the evidence is there that this stuff is good. Disease prevention, healthy aging, self-empowerment, substance abuse recovery, all sorts of things by moving our bodies. And they say that historically, and their ancestors moved all the time. Mm-hmm. They didn't sit at desks. Right. They didn't build their society the way we've built ours.
They advocate for moving for learning. Mm-hmm. And we've talked about this before on the podcast, that it helps us retain information. And, we talked about on a previous podcast, nature schools and all that. So they promote that kind of thing. They say many of us cite our busy schedules as the reason for not having time to exercise, not realizing that when we move our bodies, even for a few minutes each day, our mind works better. We can get more done in the same time we do have. Movement takes time and energy, but also creates time and energy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a lesson that I think AA says, move a muscle, change a thought. Mm-hmm. That idea also is that by just moving, something good happens. And so they talk about the 7 movement patterns, which I thought was interesting because we've talked about gymnastics and we've talked about the martial arts and some of these other things, but they say they're just 7 basic movements. There's your gait, your lunge, your hip hinge, your pull, your push, your squat, and your rotate. And by walking a lot and hiking a lot and picking up stuff. There's a picture of her picking up a log that looks like it's about 200 pounds. Yeah. But, moving lumber off the trail, those kinds of things. And I remember my dad, he used to laugh at me for going to the gym. He said, I'm moving all day long. And at farmers and people that work the land or have jobs where it requires movement are getting a benefit from that. Whereas some of professional folks are not, they've given that up, that connection to moving. Mm-hmm. And it's not been good for us when we see the cardiovascular complications of that.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned walking and hiking, and we've read a lot about it and talked a lot about, being outdoors in nature, exercising in nature. But this is a new concept to me that I really loved. She calls it Earth Gym.
Absolutely. Yeah, I was hoping we'd get to that.
Yeah.
Yeah, isn't that beautiful?
So
yeah, go to your Earth Gym.
Yeah, you don't need a gym where you have weights. There are things in nature that you can, beyond walking and hiking, you can lift rocks. Mm-hmm. You could lift that giant rock that she's or log that she's lifting. If she says if you're outside and moving your body, this is Earth Gym. There's a heavy rock or a log to lift and weight instead of the conventional equipment in the gym.
Although they do admit that their garage is a conventional gym.
Yeah, they do. Yeah,
which is okay.
That's okay
because they're blending the lessons from the ancestors and
in modern day times.
Yeah, and if they can't live in a place where they can walk the trails, then that's the next best thing.
So take your meatmobile
exactly
to the Earth Gym.
Well, no, these people call us the two-leggeds.
The two-leggeds.
In this book, we're the two-leggeds. Yeah, so the meatmobile was in the Food We Need to Eat, but we're the two-leggeds.
All right.
Food We Need to Talk.
Because the medicine wheel has some connections to aerial beings and those of the water, So we have two legs that move us around. Makes us different than some of the other natural things.
Well, we've mentioned the last book a couple times, and I want to call out some similarities. Throughout this book, like the other one, we hear a little bit of their stories, the two authors. And in movement, we hear about how Chelsea used it as an antidote to addiction, which is interesting because we learned in Food We Need to Talk how Una used it to improve her relationship with food and her body. So just a powerful...
Very powerful.
Connection there. And then Thosh talks about how an interesting thing that they did where they ran from town to town, site to site in their city, and they were praying good thoughts for those people.
I'd never heard that. I loved that concept. It's like, oh, every time I run now, I think I need to do that.
Same.
Like,
I'm like, oh, I got to try that. It just brings
although
more
Tim and
meaning.
I don't run that often.
Just away from running.
I felt like running the other day, and I'm like, I told my husband, I need to go run. I don't feel like doing any other exercise.
Good.
And so I ran up my street, and then I walked back, and he's like, I thought you went running.
I did.
I did. That's about as far as I
ran
went.
myself out.
But I ran.
Yeah. Oh.
Yep.
And I think that's the other thing that they bring to this. It's like whatever they're involved in, it is not just the activity or the focus. It's the
There's
how
so
would
much
you
more
say this?
meaning to everything.
Yeah,
spiritually, the connection to earth and community.
Right.
Everything's interconnected.
I just really, really, really like this book, you all.
Me too. Me too.
Well, the next section they talk about is land, and I'm very fond of land myself. I like to be out in nature, and I like the different kinds of land. And in these, when I'm learning about some of these indigenous populations, these different tribes experience different kinds of environments, like the prairies, or over here on the East Coast, we have more of a woodland area. You know, so there are some. So the Dakotas are very different, I think, from Louisiana. So their lands were very different, and so some of their practices are different. And they mention that too. They say we're bringing to this what we know from our ancestors, but they have talked to other Native groups and tried to bring some of that information in and say where are the commonalities here.
Right.
And I think that's what they're focusing on.
It reminded me a lot of Nature Fix and just their experiences with how they connected to the land, no matter where they were, running, being in a park. When you feel like you're in a city, you can still find ways to connect to the land. I liked that.
Yeah, they start off here talking about the culture shift towards a subsistence worldview that we might need to think about. Indigenous people everywhere share a love and respect for the land. We have never lost this sacred connection. We've never forgotten how Mother Earth provides. Because we understand how much we rely on her, we respect her accordingly. Many view the land as a resource to be used, exploited, owned, occupied. Indigenous people know that the land is a living entity to have a relationship of respect and reciprocity with. She's a life giver, a guardian, the root of all creation, the heart of the universe, and the essence of our very being. When she suffers, so do we. So the health of the land is a direct reflection of the health of the people. And they do talk about, why one of the reasons to be healthy is because healthy people make healthy families make healthy communities make a healthy tribal nation, and indeed a better world. So that idea of health is important.
And not just for personal reasons.
Yeah, for greed. So, then there's some beautiful pictures of these fellas in here.
Oh, yeah. It is a very beautiful book. But in this land section, they encourage you to learn about plants and wildlife that surround you. Sleep outside is something that they recommend a few times a year. Observe the changes in your circadian rhythm when you do that, how different it feels when you sleep under the stars, and wake up with the sunrise.
My son and I were talking about this because he came through. I didn't get his permission to talk about this, but sorry, son. He was going up to past Asheville over into Tennessee to hike a 26-mile trail or something, and
Wow.
he got like 2 miles in and saw a bear. And then he said the next 5 miles, all he could think about was the bear.
Yeah.
Yeah. And how he didn't have a walking stick, and how he wasn't with someone else, and how, all the things that he should have maybe ought to have thought of done, Anyway, so he kind of didn't go the whole trail. But in that conversation, I was talking about, have you ever slept outside? Because when I was in college, I was in an outing club, and we went somewhere here in North Carolina, climbed a hill, made a campfire, put out our sleeping bags, and we didn't have any cots or cushions. We were on the ground and, sleeping. And so he asked me a lot of questions about that experience. I thought, I'm sorry I didn't give you that experience growing up. That would have been a good thing to do. So now I have these 2 grandsons. Maybe I need to take them out in the backyard and sleep on the ground. And I can't imagine either one of them wanting to do it. It's like, why would we do that? I've got a nice bed inside. But I do think me.
Why would we do that?
Yeah, it's like, that's a dumb idea. But when I was younger, I used to beg my mother to let me sleep outside. And I thought I may be I was not like my peers, I'll say that. And I would get a lawn chair and get my sleeping bag and sleep on that. And I was like 3 feet away from the back door. I mean, it's not out in the woods. Yeah. But I liked that. I liked experiencing the sounds and the air and I don't know. So maybe I have some native in me. I don't know.
I had the privilege of going to CYO camp, which is a week-long sleepaway camp one year. Mm-hmm. And one of the last nights you sleep outside and on a sleeping bag under the stars. And
on the ground?
On the ground. Well, you have a sleeping bag, but on the ground.
But I mean, you're not up on a rack.
And I remember it being very scary, yet very breathtaking. We were far enough away from the city, and I grew up in the city, to see just a full blanket of stars above us. And you just hear like the crickets in the trees. Like every child should experience that.
Or every person.
Every person.
Yeah, and in some cities, people go to parks and lay out on the ground. I know I was in London one time and took a walk through the park at lunch, and all these people in their business clothes were laid out on the ground. And I thought, well, I don't see this in America very often. I don't think I've ever seen it in America, but maybe I don't go to the right places. But I like to do that. I'll go out every now and then and just flop out in the grass and look up, and there's something about being held by Mother Earth. It's very it's kind of soothing, and it says, okay, everything will be okay, because we know we're not all going to be here forever,
right?
And there's to me there's some sort of connection with that continuity of things when you allow yourself to have those kinds of experiences.
Agreed.
Interesting.
Okay.
Didn't expect that to come out today.
Community. Do you want to move on to community?
Sure.
Anything you highlighted there to share? I feel like this is such an important one. They all are, but...
Yeah, they had the 7 teachings that they want to share with us here. The 7 grandfather teachings are a set of values conceptualized in pre-colonial times, and they remain central to the culture of a few of these nations. And the 7 teachings are to be sincere and fair in every circumstance, to be loyal and honest to the best of one's abilities, to be empathetic, compassionate, respectful of others, to know one's place as a small but equal part of creation, to demonstrate kindness, compassion, and acceptance, to be reflective. These are good things.
They are great things.
And then 6 is to be brave and strong, to acknowledge and accept one's own weaknesses, and to take initiative. And then the last one is to accept and embrace cultural, religious, and identity differences, to uphold the rights and individuality of others in high esteem, to carry oneself with dignity. So it's like, whether or not I believe what you believe, I will respect you.
Right. Yeah.
Good lesson. These are wisdom. I'm all for that.
I feel like I want to hang this on my wall. This is really good.
Yeah.
Oh, and I want to say, apologize. I have not said the names of the tribes or these native words because I don't know how to pronounce them. And I feel like I would like to be able to say those to honor that tradition, but I don't know how to say these words, so I apologize.
I do too, and I hope I haven't slaughtered any of them. Hey, if you're as interested in prevention as I am, contact me, Eleanor Russell, at 360health, number 4, letter U.com. Whether you're interested in financial wellness or physical health products, 360 Health invites you to become part of our community. In this community, the one of my favorite parts was the part about parenting. And they said something that just kind of breaks my heart to even repeat it, but we need to. They say children should not be considered a disruption in our life. And they think that perhaps Americans now feel that way, and we shuffle our kids off everywhere away from ourselves. And maybe we do. And they say it's not worth doing that. The most important thing you have is this child. And they also say the child teaches you, which I love that.
Oh, that's 100% true.
It is, isn't it? And,
yes.
you think you know everything when you're parenting, and then you go, oh.
I have learned so much.
Yeah. I can remember my daughter taught me a lesson. Oh, it's awful. I can't believe I'm sharing this either. But we were in the car in this busy parking lot right at dinner time. We've been in the grocery store. I'm starving. She's screaming. And this little old man decides to walk in front of my car at shuffle speed.
Oh, dear.
And I'm going, come on, guy, come on. Move, you know. Oh. She looks at me from the back seat in the rear vision mirror and says, Mom, that could be my granddaddy. And I went, I am such a terrible person. She's the good person here, you know, with compassion and respect and dignity. And it's like, it's not that important if we get home on time, Mom. The guys can't move that fast.
Yeah, that's been a struggle for me to teach time management and to also not rush all the time. It's a good balance between that. But I like the concept of, involving your children and learning from one another and taking them along rather than they're a separate part of your life.
Yeah, and they have those beautiful pictures of the apparatus.
The baby wearing?
Yes,
things?
I love those
I loved
things.
wearing my babies.
And
It was so fun.
Did you have a papoose?
Well, I don't know if that's what it's
I
called,
don't know
but
either.
there's several versions of them, and I had a couple, and I loved just walking around the house with them strapped to me.
Uh-huh. And they loved it too, didn't they?
They did.
Yeah. This quote that is what I was referring to says, shift the mindset from my child is disrupting my job and workflow. And I remember during COVID, there were pictures of parents trying to do stuff on the computer, and they had the kids duct taped to the wall,
my gosh.
and that were kind of fun. But that was what I said, I can't do this and watch you too, so get out of my way. I've got to be on the computer. Anyway, to shift from that to my job and capitalism are disrupting my connection with my child because children are not the disruption.
Yeah.
I thought that was pretty good. Yeah.
That's hard. I don't have any wisdom there because I know balancing it, you gotta work. And didn't she say that she was like staying up all night to write this book at some point? So that was how she balanced it. It was writing at night and then being with her kids during the day. I don't know that I would advocate for that to get your work done.
Well, part of what they're saying is that we are not living in community because in the intergenerational communities, their aunties, their uncles, their other people close that can help you.
Yeah, I think that's the ideal. It's not always how it plays out.
Well, not the way we are structured. I mean, I'm as far away from my relatives as I probably could be.
Yeah, the children are in daycare, the older generations are in assisted living, and then your middle are working, and when it used to all be everybody helping out.
Yeah. When they do the learn, engage, and optimize recommendations here.
For community?
Yeah, they do talk about identify your role in the community. Ask yourself, what are my gifts? What can I offer? And how can I contribute? And then identify people that, want to do what you're doing as you step into this wellness journey. Who are the leaders in my family? How do I support them? Knowing that eventually I may step into their position as a pillar for my network. It's more thoughtful. They're just a little more thoughtful than I think the rush of the way I've been living.
Yeah.
And I kind of am sorry about that. And then they tell us to put ourselves out there and then engage with the community, because there are benefits to that. And there are things like cooking together, attending outdoor gatherings together, which we do like to do. I've been invited to several of those this summer. Increasing public awareness of the importance of sleep would be a good one.
Yeah. I had, I'm kind of somewhere on that spectrum. I had a conversation recently with my children about how we can be a team as a family.
Oh.
And how everybody can help cooperate. Everybody's efforts are valuable, and it takes the load off of everybody when you can look around and say, okay, how can I give some input here? How can I, the soap is empty. It's right there. Can I fill it up? Or Mom is unloading the dishwasher. Maybe I can ask to help. And so hopefully I'm encouraging community and teamwork in that way in my family.
And I think that's what a family can do. I mean, it could teach those skills of how to do that even beyond your family.
Yeah, I was going to say, and then you start with that family unit, and then you expand out. How can I do this for other people? How can I make the places that I show up to a little better before I leave them?
Yeah, I think the challenge for me with that is, it'll take a lot longer if you do it, so I'll just do it. you know, and we get into that kind of a dynamic, which is not helpful.
Yeah,
it
that's
may
a challenge that a lot of us
in the
have.
moment it may be a good answer, but in the long term, maybe the extra 10 minutes there would have been a better use for
A learning opportunity,
right,
teaching
yeah,
moment.
Yeah. Ceremony was an interesting dynamic for me in here, and they talk about returning to balance, which is something that you mentioned very early. We're never going to be in balance. We're always going to be returning to balance.
Yeah.
And that's what they talk about. This word ceremony means to them, is to bring us back to where we want to be going. Remind me what I say I want to become. You know, we've talked about that before too. And so the routines get us through the day, but the rituals guide us through life. And a lot of people rebel against rituals. And the older I get, the more I think I like ritual.
I like rituals
because
too.
I have done things for so many years now. And then I say, hey, that's good, because that gives me comfort, because I can count on that to be there, and it's going to recenter me. And they even say kind of fun things for I'm Eleanor Russell at 360 Health, making healthy happen every day. And you can find me at 360healthforyou.com. But I have some products like that have non-toxic things in them, like skincare products. And she talks in here about turn your skincare into a ritual every day. Don't just be taking care of your skin because you're supposed to take care of your skin. You know, be grateful that you have skin to take care of. Build all these recommendations that they're saying into that little thing that you do every day. And it's going to change your wellness. It will put you on a better path. And I thought, I'm going to start using that because, you know, I do things because I can, and I've been informed that they're a good choice to make. But now if I layer this other thing on top of all of that, I think I will get a better benefit.
I like it. It gives me a new perspective on self-care that I was kind of going towards anyway, is that, you know, find your own meaning to this. Don't eat well because you should. I had a conversation today with someone that I should eat more fruits and vegetables, and I prodded, why? Why is that important to you? So finding that deep, meaningful why and ground it with gratitude in everything you do, and it becomes a ritual.
Yeah. And they say the consistency of that, if you wanted to go into the science, which we do every now and then, you know, mitochondria are getting healthier, neurogenesis is happening, it's protective to your brain. I mean, there's all sorts of scientific stuff we could get into, and they don't go there in this book. They mention it, say you can go look that up if you want to. But these are age-old practices.
Yeah.
We don't need science to tell us that it works.
Yeah.
Which I love that. And I think
Me
that's
too.
also true for Eastern medicine. There are things in Eastern medicine that have been done for thousands of years, but we can't detect the meridians or, you know, the energy flow or whatever because we don't have the scientific instrumentation to do it. But we know it works, so just do this stuff. It's
Yeah.
good for you. And I think that's kind of where we are with this story as well. They do offer some caution here in the ceremony because I know there are powwows and things that I would love to go to, and actually I know that I can go to some of these. And they've even said in their writing, we're not going to say everything we could say about this because we don't feel that we should share these not secrets necessarily, but this priority information. Because there's something about spiritual theft from the indigenous ways that if they're not used properly, they can create a worse situation. So they want to be cautious in how people learn about what they have to share. And so I think that was an interesting caution. You have that FDA statement about, these are not recommended by a doctor, or these blah, blah, blah. That thing that they say for.
They say it so fast, you're like, why they even waste the time?
So they had a disclaimer as well in here.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned that. I think that's an important concept.
Mm-hmm. That they want to share with us, but we need to become an ally for their teachings, if they're not our tradition. Sacred spaces is another one of the sacred circles, and it has to do with ideas like make your home an extension of your well-being.
Yeah.
And that feng shui stuff that we read was sort of saying that too, is it's not just for physical maintenance, but it's also for our spiritual maintenance.
Right, and something as simple as decluttering or minimizing things can bring you peace. Set up your space to improve your spiritual health, set you up to be more gracious and generous. Yeah. And then lastly...
No, not lastly.
Sleep.
Let's go over sleep quickly, because they do say sleep is really important, and we've talked a little bit about sleeping outside and that.
Yeah.
But I really want us to, as we get to the close of this, to talk about your favorite subject, food.
Yes.
And I also want to say I think it's interesting, it's the very last thing they talked about.
Yeah.
And I liked that. It's not like the first thing that's important.
Well, I love nutrition, and I can always talk about food, but I don't take offense to that, because I feel like, it has its place, and it should not necessarily be first.
Right.
But sleep. Tell us what stood out to you in this section.
I was going to say, I don't have much to say about that, because I think it's pretty much what we've said before.
Right. Okay.
From our other readings. Like, go with the circadian rhythms and the daylight cycles and get away from computers and...
So I was very, curious. Okay, what are they going to say in this food?
I want to know what you're going to say.
Should we hunt all of our food and whatnot? But what the kind of takeaway that I liked is just understand other people's culture, respect that, but there's opportunity to dive into your own food culture and appreciate your food past. Have ceremonies around your preparation of food. What kind of rituals around food can you bring to your family or keep alive in your family? And I feel like that's the part that we miss out so often with diet industry and wellness, is that food is all about weight loss, or food is all about, even health. But I love how they tie it to these other important aspects of our life.
This episode of the Health Geeks Book Club podcast is brought to you by me, Sal, your financial pal. If you ever have questions or concerns about achieving your financial successes on a personal or business level, give me a call. I also connect with 401k planning, so if that's something you're interested in, glad to do it for you guys. Again, this is Sal Edward Jones. Happy to help wherever you are on your journey. Let's plan for tomorrow, today. My office can be reached at 336-748-1271. Look forward to connecting with you all soon. Hola, me llamo Salvador Valencia y trabajo con Edward Jones. Soy un asesor financiero y lo que hago es planear para el futuro. Si hay muchos cambios en su vida que pueden ocurrir, me pueden llamar y les puedo contestar sus preguntas. Si tienen preguntas sobre inversiones o cómo su dinero puede trabajar más fuerte por ustedes, llámame y yo les puedo contestar sus preguntas y darle información en cómo se puede hacer. Me pueden contactar al número 336-748-1271.
They bring up that colonization discussion in here again. The colonization of food, the transformation from traditional to tribal, to family, domestic, to individual capitalistic food culture, and the negative effect it has on health. And we've had those statistics shared so many times in our writing. We even talked about ultra-processed foods,
Right.
Those things are not advocated for in this discourse. And they say in order to begin our collective healing, we believe that it's important to acknowledge that the colonialism, the land expansion, and the trauma as the deeper root of this food issue that we're struggling with in the United States right now. And that convenience culture has separated most people from the once ubiquitous sacred relationship with food. Well, they do come up with a kind of another list of 7. That's that magic number 7. 7 actions to strengthen your relationship with food. 1 is to give thanks, and 2 is to hunt and fish. And I want to stop on that one for a minute because I come from a hunting and fishing culture in my family. Mm-hmm. And my kids grew up on venison. I didn't buy much beef during the time they were growing up. And I like beef. But he took his daughter out, the older daughter, and I can't remember how old she was, but she was in a backpack, and he went on the hunt with her, and then pulls his bow back and kills the animal. And he tells that story about how important that is for her to understand where food comes from and the sacrifice the animal makes, and how we need to be grateful for that gift they have given us. And da-da-da-da-da-da-da.
And with that comes using as much as the animal as you possibly can.
Absolutely, every bit of it. And so he says, which I thought was a very strong statement in here, the imposition of a plant-based narrative, which we are hearing a lot of, everybody should eat plant-based diets. The imposition of a plant-based narrative from a standpoint of moral superiority is inherently anti-Indigenous. And he goes and discusses that, and it's a really good conversation that I think would give insight to lots of people who have opinions, but maybe haven't heard the other side of the conversation. And he does a good job of sharing that. And then the other fun thing that, Kristen, I wanted to know if you had ever heard of, it's the way they did their portion size measurements. Okay. Let me share that with you because I thought it was really cool. Typically, for meat and protein, it's recommended that you eat a piece that can fit in the palm of your hand. I've heard that before.
Yes.
Okay.
I tell my patients that often.
Okay. And for carbohydrates, it's anywhere from 1 to 2 closed fist portions.
Like a cupped handful, yes.
1 to 2 of those.
Yep.
Okay. And then depending on your needs, for fats and oils, we measure the width and length of our index finger.
Okay. I use my thumb.
There you go. So you're doing the Indigenous pattern. You didn't even know it.
I didn't know it.
How about that? I love that. I thought that's such a simple way to, for Tim, who says he loves to eat, and just that idea of, well, how much is a reasonable amount or is good for my body? Because that's based on my proportions, right?
And you always have your hands.
Right, yeah.
Yeah.
So they wind it all up, and I think we mentioned that this was a 2023 book. Mm-hmm. It's very current. It has notes. It has an index. No, it doesn't, does it? That was the one thing I was going to say. Yeah, no, it has the notes. It doesn't have an index.
No index.
Yeah, and the notes are not the typical things that I would have thought to find in their references. There's a lot of non-traditional sources, is what I would say. Yeah. So anyway, Eleanor recommends this book.
I'm really glad I read it, and I think it's great for a very holistic, grounded view that we don't get exposed to. Mm-hmm. So, and it's beautiful. So even if you just buy it and want to, browse through it a little bit at a time as you put it on your table, do that.
Or go to the library and check it out.
And you can go to our website and help us out and purchase it through our website. We appreciate that, which is
healthgeekspodcast.com.
Thank you. And I'm Kristen Norton, a registered dietitian from Well Balanced Nutrition. I invite you to visit wellbalancednutrition.com and get to know us a little bit. And if you would like, set up a free clarity call to talk with one of our dietitians.
And opinions stated in this podcast are solely those of the contributors and are not necessarily those of our distributors or hosting company. This podcast is copyrighted, and no part can be reproduced without the expressed written consent of Kristen and Eleanor.